The What Just Happened studio had built its reputation on one specific promise: unfiltered royal commentary that never softened its assessment of the Sussexes. Meghan Markle sat across from Kevin O'Sullivan, and something about the room suggested this wouldn't unfold the way her team had hoped. Kevin opened warmly enough, called the appearance genuinely brave, said he'd spent years discussing her from a distance, and had been waiting for the chance to actually ask her directly. Meghan, cautiously composed, settled into what she assumed might be an opportunity to reshape the narrative. She was wrong. Kevin asked about the trip she'd skipped, about the wellness retreat controversy, about why her own children had gone to Highgrove without her. What Meghan said made Kevin's expression sharpen with something between amusement and genuine irritation. What Kevin said after that, still smiling, still deceptively casual, but landing with precision honed over years of coverage, would dominate royal commentary for the following week. Because Kevin O'Sullivan had been building his case against her for years from the outside. Tonight, Meghan finally sat across from him directly. This is the interview nobody expected to happen. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and let's see what happened. The What Just Happened studio carried an atmosphere different from Meghan's other bookings. Smaller, sharper, built entirely around unapologetic royal commentary. Kevin had spent years constructing episodes specifically around her choices, developing an audience that expected exactly this kind of directness. She actually agreed to come on, the producer mentioned during prep, still slightly stunned. After years of the show covering her this way, Kevin had laughed. "I've been waiting for this exact moment. Let's see if she can handle in person what she's apparently been avoiding for years. She's been walking out of other interviews lately. She won't walk out on me without hearing everything I've wanted to say directly to her face for years," Kevin said. "That's a promise." Meghan arrived with her usual entourage, settling into the guest chair with practiced composure that didn't quite mask her uncertainty. "Meghan, this is genuinely brave of you. I've been discussing you for years without you ever being in the room to respond." Meghan's smile was measured. "I wanted to address some of this directly." "Good, because I've got a lot to actually ask you directly, finally." "Let's start with something recent," Kevin said, maintaining his energetic tone. "Your children went to Highgrove with Harry to meet the king. You weren't there. We covered this extensively, the security denial, the last-minute scramble. Why weren't you with them?" "Security arrangements were complicated for the broader visit." "Complicated how?" "We've discussed this exact contradiction on the show for weeks. The Home Office denied protection outside royal properties, which is specifically why you and the kids initially weren't coming at all. Then somehow the kids show up without you. That's the exact gap we've been dissecting. There were logistical adjustments made. Adjustments significant enough to get your children to meet their grandfather while you stayed in California? We've actually predicted this exact scenario on the show before it happened. What's the real explanation?" "Children's security assessments differ from adult protocols." "Sure, but you've traveled to considerably more dangerous places than England. Colombia, Nigeria, the Middle East. That's documented. We've covered it repeatedly. So the idea that England specifically was too risky for you, but fine for your 7- and 5-year-olds, doesn't track logically. Every trip involves different risk calculations." "Different how specifically?" "Because from where I sit, and from what we've discussed extensively on this show, it looks like convenient selective absence rather than genuine security concern." "The Australian wellness retreat," Kevin continued, his tone still energetic but pointed. "Women paying thousands for access to you. We covered the backlash extensively. People feeling deceived by brief appearances. What's your actual response to that criticism?" "My participation was clearly outlined in advance." "Clearly outlined to whom?" "The marketing suggested meaningful access. Women traveled internationally expecting real interaction. We read testimonials on the show from attendees who felt misled. How do you explain that gap?" "I can't control people's individual expectations." You can control what your own marketing promises, though. We've covered enough of these ventures to see a pattern. Premium pricing, underwhelming delivery. That's not misunderstanding on the audience's part. That's a business model. That's an unfair characterization of a legitimate wellness event. Legitimate events don't typically leave paying attendees feeling deceived enough to speak to media about it afterward. We had actual quotes from actual attendees on the show. Are you saying they're lying? I'm saying individual experiences vary. Multiple individual experiences describing the same pattern of disappointment isn't variance. That's consistency, which is exactly what concerns us on the show. Netflix, Kevin pressed on. We've spent multiple episodes on this. The underperforming show, the as-ever struggles, sources describing the relationship as essentially finished. What's actually happening there? Creative partnerships have natural evolutions. That's the exact corporate language we've mocked on the show repeatedly. Your show didn't meet expectations. The Jam brand became something Buckingham Palace felt compelled to address publicly. That's not evolution. We've documented it extensively as failure. I don't discuss ongoing business matters. You don't discuss substance, but you're happy letting the appearance of success continue, while documented reality tells a completely different story. We've built entire segments around exactly that gap. Every business faces challenges at various stages. Sure, but yours seem to consistently fail rather than face temporary challenges. We've tracked Spotify, Netflix, The Retreat, now potentially more product ventures. At what point does the pattern become the actual story rather than individual bad luck? Your father, Kevin continued, shifting terrain but maintaining directness. Thomas Markle. We've covered the estrangement extensively, his health issues, his public pleas. What's actually preventing reconciliation, especially given the current family reconciliation efforts on Harry's side? Meghan's expression closed. My relationship with my father is private. Private, yet we've discussed it on this show using your own public statements, documentaries, and interviews as source material. He's elderly. He's had serious health complications. He's publicly begging for contact. What's actually stopping you? There's complex history requiring context. There's always complex history according to you. But years of estrangement while he's pleading, at what point does maintaining distance become the actual choice rather than circumstance? You're oversimplifying genuine pain. I'm asking you to explain the actual complexity since you keep referencing it without ever detailing it. What specifically prevents even a phone call after 6 years? Silence. That silence is fairly telling, honestly. The staff situation, Kevin said, his tone sharpening. 18 departures by some counts. We've covered specific reports about working conditions extensively. What's your response to that pattern? Every organization experiences turnover. At that rate? We've had actual former staff members' accounts referenced on this show. That's not standard turnover. That's documented pattern we've discussed repeatedly. What's actually driving it? You're relying on unverified sources. We're relying on consistent reporting across multiple years from multiple outlets. That's not unverified. That's the exact material this show has built years of content around. Media narratives often distort workplace dynamics. Multiple independent sources describing similar experiences isn't distortion. That's corroboration. We've discussed the specific pattern of communications directors cycling through particularly rapidly. What's actually happening in that role specifically? I won't discuss internal personnel matters. You brought up systemic change as your mission. Internal personnel matters seem directly relevant to whether that mission is actually functioning. Let's discuss Kris Jenner, Kevin said, his tone carrying genuine curiosity now. We've covered the reported friendship extensively. That seems like an odd pairing given your stated humanitarian priorities. What's the actual thinking there? I value insights from successful businesswomen. Kris Jenner's entire model is maximum exposure and monetization of family life. That's rather the opposite of the privacy-focused humanitarian narrative you've built. We've discussed this contradiction repeatedly on the show. How do you reconcile it? Business relationships don't require ideological alignment. They usually reveal something about actual priorities, though. If you're seeking guidance specifically on brand building and exposure management, that suggests a direction rather different from what you've publicly claimed to represent. I need to say something, Meghan said, her composure cracking. You've built your entire career mocking Harry and me specifically, week after week, for years. That's genuinely harmful. Kevin leaned back, genuinely unbothered. I've built my career covering you and Harry accurately, week after week, for years. There's a difference. Everything we've discussed has been documented, reported, verified. If accurate coverage feels harmful, that's worth examining honestly. You've profited from ridiculing us specifically. I've profited from honest commentary that happens to be entertaining because you two consistently provide such extraordinary material. That's not my fault, that's just accurate journalism with personality attached. You've never given us a fair hearing. I'm giving you one right now, actually. Direct questions, in person, with the chance to actually answer rather than being discussed in your absence. This is about as fair a hearing as this show could possibly offer. Every question tonight has felt like continued mockery, Meghan said, standing up slightly. Every question tonight has been directly relevant to documented events. Your children going without you, the retreat backlash, the Netflix struggles, your estranged father. Those aren't invented topics. They're literally what's happened, extensively covered. You clearly came here with an agenda against me. I came here with years of accumulated questions you've never actually had to answer directly. Tonight was the first time you couldn't just be discussed in your absence. You actually had to respond. That's different from agenda. That's accountability finally arriving. This has been an ambush from the start. You knew exactly what show you were coming on to. Years of episodes about you specifically. If you expected softer treatment, that expectation was unrealistic, given the show's entire premise. The divorce rumors, Kevin continued, refusing to let the tension slow him. We've covered this extensively too. What's your actual response? Tabloid fabrication entirely. Fabrication requiring formal denial, though. We've dissected that denial on the show multiple times. What's generating this level of persistent speculation if there's nothing behind it? People who wish us harm invent narratives. They need material to invent from. We've never had to invent anything about you two. The material writes itself, week after week. That's a hostile characterization of years of scrutiny we didn't ask for. You built entire platforms around inviting scrutiny, documentaries, books, interviews. The scrutiny you're describing as unwanted has actually been actively courted for years, just selectively when it's favorable. This entire show has been built on hostility toward my family, Meghan said, grabbing her purse. This entire show has been built on covering your family's choices honestly, with commentary attached. If honest coverage feels hostile, the discomfort exists in what actually happened, not in how I've described it. Meghan moved toward the exit. I expected some basic decency. You got directness, which is apparently what actually bothered you. Decency doesn't mean uncritical acceptance. Those are different things entirely. You called this brave initially. It was brave to finally show up after years of being discussed from a distance. It's not brave to leave the moment actual accountability arrives. You're demonstrating that gap right now, on camera, for everyone who's followed this show for years. Meghan paused at the studio exit. You'll regret how you've handled this. I doubt it, Kevin said, settling back comfortably. Years of covering exactly this pattern: deflection, victimhood, eventual departure. Tonight simply confirmed everything the show has been saying for years, except this time you were actually here to demonstrate it yourself. History will show. History will show a duchess who finally showed up after years of being discussed, then couldn't handle direct questions about her own documented choices. That's not particularly flattering, but it's accurate. Meghan left. The studio door closed behind her. Kevin turned to face his usual panel, genuinely energized. Well, that's exactly what I expected, if I'm being completely honest. He adjusted his position. Years of covering this woman specifically. Years of documenting exactly this pattern. Tonight she actually showed up, and within 20 minutes, she demonstrated everything we've been saying for years. The deflection, the victimhood language, the eventual walkout when actual accountability arrived. He shook his head, genuinely amused. I called her appearance brave because coming onto this show after years of criticism does take something. But bravery in showing up doesn't excuse avoiding every question once you're actually here. Here's what strikes me, Kevin continued, his tone growing more reflective. We've built years of content around exactly this pattern with her specifically. Tonight wasn't new information, it was confirmation, delivered by the woman herself rather than through reporting about her. He gestured toward the empty guest chair. I didn't insult her personally. Every question traced back to documented events, the retreat backlash, the Netflix struggles, her estranged father, the staff departures. She couldn't engage with any of it honestly, and instead accused the show of mockery for simply covering her accurately. He managed a satisfied smile. Years of this show, finally validated in person. That's genuinely rare in this business. The footage aired that week. The channel made no edits. The clips that spread captured the collision. Adjustments significant enough to get your children to meet their grandfather while you stayed in California? That's not evolution. We've documented it extensively as failure. That's the exact material this show has built years of content around. If accurate coverage feels harmful, that's worth examining honestly. It's not brave to leave the moment actual accountability arrives. Tonight simply confirmed everything the show has been saying for years. Meghan's team released a statement calling the interview a hostile ambush from a commentator who's built his career attacking our family. Kevin addressed it during his next episode. Ambush implies deception about format. This show has spent years covering the Sussexes honestly, and everyone watching knew exactly what they were getting. She agreed to come on specifically. What followed wasn't ambush. It was years of accumulated questions finally getting asked directly instead of discussed in her absence. He added, "We've covered this pattern for years without her ever having to respond personally. Tonight, she finally did, and it went exactly the way years of coverage suggested it would. That's not attack, that's just years of accurate commentary being vindicated." For Kevin O'Sullivan, the interview became the culmination of years spent building royal commentary around exactly this pattern. The ability to predict, with remarkable accuracy, precisely how Meghan would respond when actual accountability finally arrived in person. For Meghan Markle, it was uniquely damaging precisely because she'd chosen to finally confront a critic directly, believing her presence alone might shift the narrative. Instead, walking out during a conversation she'd specifically agreed to confirmed years of commentary rather than contradicting any of it. Kevin called her appearance brave. Meghan believed showing up would be enough. Kevin asked about Highgrove. Meghan couldn't explain her own absence. Kevin asked about the retreat. Meghan couldn't defend the outcome. Kevin asked about her father. Meghan offered only vague generalities before walking out entirely. And in that departure, in that devastating confirmation of years of accumulated commentary, everything anyone needed to know about the gap between showing up and actually engaging became impossible to ignore. That's the whole story. Years of commentary finally met in person. Called brave for showing up. Couldn't survive 20 minutes once the actual questions arrived. What does that tell you about the difference between confrontation and accountability? If you want more content that recognizes when years of prediction meet reality, subscribe, turn on notifications, drop a like, share this with someone. More commentary, more clarity, more of what years of royal coverage teaches you about predicting exactly how this pattern unfolds. Stay with us.